Hello everyone, Mr. E here. Today I'm here to discuss something that is always really exciting for me to think about, to sort of daydream about, and that's what is Darktide gonna do in the future? I'm especially looking forward for 2025 being a good year, and I say that because I've been looking at the growth of this game recently. This is the Steam charts from just the last month alone, and there was a good time, a year a plus ago in around February where I was really worried for this game. This humpback here in October of 2023 was from the skills update, which the talent trees update, which I think was the biggest update that fatshark has ever put out for the game, and I was really worried the game is going to kind of peter out because of the eternal delay for the crafting update. But they seem to have brought it back, and in the last month here, we're looking at a pretty consistent 11 to 12k every day, and I think that's great for a game like this. This is not a game that's going to suit everyone, so I'm very happy with that being where it's at. I'm also very happy as a content creator because I love playing this game, and I like when there's an audience and people interested in this game. I don't want to just be playing it and putting up videos for nobody to watch. I think it's just a really entertaining game. It's really energetic, and it takes a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge, so I'm really excited to share that with you guys. But what I'm here to share with you guys today is the thing I am most excited for, which is what is coming next for Darktide. There are 5 things that I prepared in the video today, and this video is going to order those 5 things in order of the likelihood that they will happen. The first one is absolutely definitely happening, probably even happening before the end of the year 2024, and then number 2 is going to happen in some form, but TBD on that, and then everything else is sort of up in the air because they haven't announced any concrete plans or hinted to any of them outside of some in-game stuff just yet. But before we get started, I'd like to make an appeal to you all. If you are not yet subscribed and you like Darktide content, I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe. It's been helping me out so much. My channel has just been blowing up. I guess something that I'm doing is working and people are liking it, whether it's the gameplay of me struggling to stab a chaos spawn or shooting that trapper in the face. You have come to the right place if you like cool gameplay, and I guess some people like my voice or something too. But I am going to be focusing on Darktide a lot, especially in 2025, which I expect to be a good year. And if you're in for that, then I'd love to have your subscription, maybe a like, and all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So the first thing that is going to be coming to Darktide perhaps in late 2024 is more operations. And I say that because in the last update post about the mission Rolling Steel, the first of the operations missions, which are those shorter missions that they're working on, they have straight up said they are experimenting with more of this mission type as alternatives to the normal types of missions. I could not find it, but somewhere, in fact, they also said there might end up being a separate queue for these sort of missions, so that when you quick play, you can quick play for operations, or you can quick play for the longer sort of exploration style missions. And I think both have their ups and downs, but they did say that they would be delving into more of this based on the reaction, sort of the feedback from their players. And as a longtime fatshark player, I can go ahead and tell you that they were actually not waiting on that. They were probably invested in doing this regardless of whether or not the players actually liked it. But it's very fortunate that based on what I saw, the players did actually like it. And there's a couple reasons why I think this operations game mode is going to be really good for the game. The first one is just the time. 30-minute missions are fun and cool and all if you have a lot of time, but a lot of times 30-minute missions can be a bit of a slog, especially if you're a lower level player. 30-minute missions have a lot of just like walking when you're playing on the lower difficulties. There's not a whole lot of enemy intensity, and you see that when you're playing on like Damnation, Rolling Steel, that level of intensity, like consistent intensity, can tend to overwhelm some players. So I think it adds additional level of intensity that you don't see outside of usually events like this one on Clandestium Gloriana. Which brings me to my other point about these missions, which is I think that they are a good way for fatshark to push players and threaten to actually kill them. Like, these operations can have fail states. Raise your hand if you were a player who failed rolling steel at least twice before you actually succeeded it. I can't see your hands, but know that I have my hand raised, and I know a lot of you have your hands raised too. And that's because, like, this is a very fast-paced mission. It has a lose there's a built-in way to lose the mission without just everybody dying. And everybody dying is becoming an increasingly hard thing to have happen in the game. So I like the idea that this mission is ready to punish you and just say, hey, you lose. That's something that I think, this is not what anything that Fatshark would admit, but I think it's something that they are afraid to build into regular missions, especially on final events, because the farther into a level an event is, the more devastating it is when you die to that event. Think of all the ending events in the game. I can think of exactly one that is actually scary at all and might cause you to wipe, and that's the ending event on Hab Draco, the Plague Tree. This is like a very early event on Clandestium Glorianae, and it's probably the second most challenging event in the game, in my approximation. And I just, I don't think that they really want to kill players 30 minutes into a mission, because every time you kill players that deep into a mission, there's a big chance that when they leave that mission, they're like, all right, I'm done for the night. And every time they do that, there's a big chance that they say, I'm going to play something else tomorrow. And that's how you lose players, is you just frustrate them by, like, killing them with cheap ending events. But with these shorter missions, I've wiped to Rolling Steel a lot. Not necessarily always through my own fault, and generally not, but it's okay when you wipe or when you're failing after 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes. It's not 32 minutes down the drain. The other thing I'd like to see changed about the operations is, and I'm sure they're thinking of this, is there needs to be different loss conditions. The problem that I have with Rolling Steel, as it currently is you can lose this mission effectively really early on by not being fast enough. If you are too far behind the timetable after like the first 2 hacks, you basically, if you are an experienced player, you've already lost. You literally cannot complete the rest of the mission in time. There's not enough time to hack and kill the boss and break the things. So you just leave. And that is just kind of a bummer. I think that the way they could fix that is really easy. Just introduce mechanics that cause you to instant lose as part of like what you need to be doing. So 2 easy ones I can think of for this would be having a keep bringing coolant cores to the reactor, or else it goes nuclear and explodes and nukes you all. That's an easy one. If you don't keep up with the objective, you instantly die. Or conversely, defend the payload from heretics damaging it, or else it's going to explode and kill you all, right? Or that's another great instant loss, where if you aren't keeping up with the onslaught, you just instantly lose, whether it's at 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or at 10 minutes, and then you reset from there, rather than having it be where you're stuck waiting in this mission for the bar to fill all the way up and the train to crash into the wall and everybody blows up and dies. But anyway, that's enough about the first thing that is definitely coming to Darktide. Let's go on to number 2. Number 2, more difficulties. So this is something that they have been requested of by a certain tangent of the player base. I won't name names, but it includes myself for certain for a while now, and that's to increase the difficulty, or to make it so there are more difficulties in the game. And they are looking into this. Here's how I justify the fact that they are looking into it. It's because they were asked this question during a recent Q&A about the crafting update. And the question was, is this update going to come with balancing changes? A lot of us feel the game is too easy, even on the hardest difficulties right now. Skipping over a little bit, some enemy buffs would be welcomed. So they say, we are aware of this problem and try to balance the game accordingly. Still, as different players will see balance changes differently, we want to be careful and try to respect all players' investments in the game. I'm going to pause and translate that for you. What that means is, right now, there are a lot of players who are just trying this game out for the first time, or returning after a very long time. They may not have the prerequisite experience, they may still be building their builds. So they need to be careful not to give a broad buff to all the enemies in the game right now, just because there are overpowered builds and stuff. Hopefully, the mastery system will allow us to be a bit more forthright with balance changes, since it will make it easier for players to adapt to any new meta in the game without having to rely on RNG systems to do so. Alright, let's pause and translate this. What this says is, before, when we had this RNG system, there were a lot of players who were hard stuck behind RNG because they couldn't invest the resources or hours to brute force getting one of the powerful builds in the game running. Now that you can guarantee getting one of the powerful builds, you will join that powerful build echelon, and there are going to be many more players who are using the better builds because they are not just beholden to using whatever loot the RNG system drops them. And this is going to allow them, fatshark, this is going to allow fatshark to more correctly ascertain what is the overall skill level, or what is the overall challenge level that the player base can face at this point. And I think without much argument, we can definitely figure out that that challenge level that the average player can undertake now is going up because we are having access to better weapons, weapons that are rolled better, and weapons that have the best possible blessings if you invest any resources in them at all. So they're definitely looking into this. They also say, we are working on other features that will address this problem, but more news about them in the future when they're in a more solid state to share. So what that means to me is they are looking at ways other than just buffing enemies across the board to make this difficulty thing sort of work out. And I think the most obvious way that they would do this, based on my experience from Vermintide 2 and just some common sense, is to add a 6th higher difficulty. And in Vermintide 2, just for some comparison here, the 6th difficulty is called Cataclysm, and in comparison to Legend, the 5th difficulty, it has 300% enemy HP and 200% enemy damage and spawn rates, or something to that number. It's absolutely ludicrous, and most players think you're insane if you try it. However, it is sort of this a very challenging level of content where even players that have the best possible gear available, you really need to be improving on your skills, and it's going to take you a long time, a lot of play hours to master that content and to get to the point where that is then boring. Adding a 6th difficulty will add a lot of replayability to this game for players like myself and many others. I think this is a sentiment that maybe some of you haven't been able to feel yet because you're not quite, you're putting Auric Damnation on farm. But when I play games on Auric Damnation and I see, myself and the other people in the lobby all have over 200 levels on a character each, a lot of times the game just becomes everybody competing to see who can get the kills first. It's not a struggle for survival, which is what Darktide feels like when it's at its best. It's just a quick killing competition. Who can sprint into the next room and headshot the most enemies before the other allies get in there and single-handedly kill all of the gunners and stuff. And you can see that's what I'm doing in this picture here, is I'm just killing all of these gunners and stuff before my allies can get in here and do it. And it's really no problem at all because this build is overpowered. I think it would be really nice to return the game, or at least have a difficulty that could return the game to a state where we can have something new to optimize around, where you need to be bringing your best game, you need to be playing your best possible in order to complete the mission. Because right now I can just kind of goof around, I can have a whole team of people goofing around, and our builds can carry us through content. If all of us are running shout plasma gunners, just think of it like that. If you had a team of 4 shouting veteran shout plasma guns, how easy would an Auric Damnation be? Pretty damn easy. And that's sort of what this higher difficulty should be balanced around, is if everybody takes the best possible builds, is it still a challenge? Is it still fun? And so that should be coming hopefully soon, almost definitely sometime in 2025 we'll be seeing that. And I think that'll add a lot of life to the game because right now it's becoming a bit toxic for players who are new and are coming up the ranks and are getting into Damnations to find players, probably like myself in this picture, who were just running ahead of the team and doing their own thing, not really caring about their teamwork. Thankfully, a couple of people in this game here are my subscribers, so they didn't yell at me too much about it. But yeah, it's never fun to play with people who are just too experienced for the level they're playing at. It would be nice to have a new skill bracket for all those old hands who have done everything there is to do on Damnation and really need a challenge to kick their teeth in. All right, let's go on to number 3. The third thing that should be coming to Darktide, I hope, this next year is new classes. This is something that has not been teased or discussed at all by the developers, by fatshark, but it is something that has been highly requested by the community, and I, as a player and a person who knows fatshark, can't imagine a world in which they are not thinking, being creative of new ways to work some of the abilities that could be brought into this realm, into this game. They just in 2024, I believe it was early 2024, they released the final update class for Vermintide 2, the Necromancer for Sienna, who is the Psyker equivalent of that game, which has summoned minions, and that has a lot of players hoping for a Necromancer if you're a Borderlands 2 fan, but what is Hadron called? One of those people, someone who can like make drones or something that patrol the battlefield and serve some sort of utility. There are lots of different things to draw from in the Warhammer universe. That's something that's really great about having this established IP, and they do such a great job of that generally. Since this is again a thing that fatshark has done in the past, is bring in additional playable classes. I can't imagine they would stay away from it. Plus, you have to think as game designers, as the people who made the actual inner workings of this game and designed the talent trees and made these classes and stuff, those people definitely know what they're doing. I mean, the game is super fun to play. A lot of the talents and abilities are just so they're so juicy. They make this game what it is. They have to be thinking of like all these cool ideas that don't necessarily fit into any of the classes that exist, and trying to invent a new class archetype that they could put it into. That will likely, whenever their new class comes out, if it follows in fatshark's trend of the past, it will likely be a DLC. In the past, their DLCs were incredibly affordable. I think the base DLC for the new class was like $4, and then if you wanted to get a fancy armor that came with it, for the specific for that class for Vermintide 2, it was something like $10 or $11. So very, very reasonable for a whole new class and talent tree. And I think it would be something that not only would players be really, really excited about, but it would add a lot of depth to the game, considering that we already have 4 classes and there's so many ways to play them. Adding 20% more would make the diversity in the types of builds and stuff in this game insane. I don't know what sort of thing they're thinking of. There have been no teases as far as I can tell. Even in the game, sometimes the in-game chat and stuff kind of gives away what their ideas are for future missions and that sort of thing, but I have seen nothing that has pointed to any evidence for what they'd be doing for future classes. But I am very excited that it would be some sort of servitor or something like that. Oh, there's the word, servitor. I knew it the whole time, apparently. I'm very excited that it would be some sort of servitor or something of that sort, or maybe a straight support class that mainly focuses around buffing their allies or something like that. Who knows? The world of rattling is something I've seen people suggest. There's a variety of possibilities, and I think that's what's got me so excited about the idea, along with just being able to play something new and finding the overpowered and the really fun stuff to do on it is always so juicy for myself and for players. So I would be really excited to see that, and that is definitely high on my hopes for 2025. Let's check out number 4. So the fourth thing that I think is likely to come to Darktide is likely to take much longer than a new player class, though that being said, I think given the evidence that we have, it is almost guaranteed to happen at some point, and that is a new enemy faction. An enemy faction is going to be quite an undertaking. just based on the number of new specials and models, they won't have to do too much new rigging because this new enemy class will very likely be another humanoid type enemy. But this is going to be a big thing for Fatshark to add, and they'll have to come up with some new maps for it too, because I think a lot of these engagements are going to take place in a place that is not Tertium, which is the hive city we are currently in on New Atoma, the name of the planet, if you weren't familiar with all that lore. If you couldn't figure out from what I've been saying so far, here are some in-game dialogues between characters that sort of tease to the idea that there is, not tease, but like literally say that there is another hive city on this planet of Atoma, and that there is potentially a gene stealer cult there. And that Moro has had a lot of run-ins in his history, his questionably long history with these gene stealers. And there's also a lot of drama, questioning around Explicator Zola that I don't see her mentioned here. Especially if you play a Psyker or you ever have Psykers in your team, Psykers will routinely comment. You can see one in the very bottom down here, saying that this Psyker can sense the occupants of the second hive city on Atoma. Why does everyone pretend it's Forsaken? Well, it's because the Inquisition here basically has an information blackout over this hive city existence, and there are a lot of other voice lines that I've heard myself, but I could not find them translated into text that basically says, like, I can't make out what's being said. One could like extrapolate that there might be some sort of like psychic, maybe like firewall that the Inquisition is somehow able to put up through the use of their own psychers to prevent the gene stealers from getting out their psychic cry to the Tyranid swarm, right? If you are unfamiliar with what gene stealer cults is, they are going to be a perfect fit for this game, because basically they are Tyranids, who are the Zerg equivalent of Warhammer 40k, who have infiltrated their DNA into, in like small amounts, into humanoids, who then just sort of live among other humanoids and interbreed with them. And over generations, their character traits become more and more pronounced. They start to sort of like develop horns and like strange hairless faces and different looking eyes, and they tend to conceal their appearances. There's been a lot of thought that several different characters in the lore might be gene stealers or gene stealer hybrids, including the guy who's in Clandestium Gloriana, the guy who meets you at the very start of it. I forget what his name is. It's something stupid. But yeah, the fact that his countenance is fully covered is sometimes an indication of gene stealers, of them having like this hybrid DNA. And it would be a perfect level of threat for us to undertake, because these enemies are basically humanoid, though as they are more like fully developed and undergo more mutation by like being further like more pure Tyranid DNA, they become stronger. Now, Fatshark will have to do some lore sort of justification to explain how we could take on really any Tyranid threats, because the pure like physical strength of some of these Tyranids is just like worlds above what rejects could realistically face. But I think they've done a good job with putting demon hosts into the lore, and demon hosts are like city-ending creatures normally, so I don't see it being too much of a challenge. Mostly it'll be fun, but they are humanoid enemies generally, and they could rig up a few specials to go with it. But it would be a great new addition to the game to have some new enemies, especially some new specials, or just something else to kind of like make the enemy variety even greater. Like if you played Vermintide 2 at all, the introduction of Beastmen was pretty huge. Beastmen were roundly seen as one of the hardest enemies in the game, in a game that already had Chaos and Skaven to deal with. If you rolled Beastmen into a map, you were like Oh my god, no. Because they had ranged attackers, they had really hard to dodge attacks, they had charging enemies. I mean, fatshark got really creative with that, and I think they would get really creative with a new type of enemy in Darktide too. So I think this is almost definitely coming to Darktide at some point, just based on all the teasing, and we will very likely see some missions where we are deployed to the second hive city on Atoma to deal with the threat there. If Inquisitor Grendel, if that is really his name, if Inquisitor Grendel actually wants this planet to be saved. If not, they probably have to just do a Brigadus on it. You know, like at this point, if it's got Gene Stealers and Nurgle cultists, this place is pretty much cooked. But maybe we can save it. Remains to be seen. And let us go on to the last thing, the thing that I hope the most out of all of these will come to Darktide, though I think it is the most far off and the most unlikely. And the final thing that I really, really desperately want to come to Darktide, though I'm not certain if they have any plans to make it come here, is a whole new game type. And I'm not just talking about operations. I'm talking about a game type that they had in Vermintide 2 that I thought was the best thing since sliced bread. I had about 1,700 hours in the game when this game mode was introduced, and it allowed me to pull an extra 1,000 out of it before the player base just dried up because Darktide got released and improved itself over Vermintide. And that game mode is called Chaos Waste. Now, if you played, you're familiar with this map. Basically what it was is you undertook a series of short missions. Think operations that were each roughly 7 to 10 minutes long, and after each one and during each one you would collect money from downed bosses, from optional objectives, and from just finding it laying around the map, and you would use that to purchase boons in the map. Now, in the lore of Vermintide, these were boons from the Chaos Gods that you were using that would like give you these, powers, these magical powers that could make you much stronger in certain ways. In the lore of this game, I think it would make more sense if we had, some shady and unscrupulous types who would sell us things during a mission for a cost, who would sneak out of the shadows. Think Hallowette, she just kind of shows up out of the blue and is like, hey, you got a few, not Aquilas, because that's a premium currency, but like Aquilos, and I'll sell you this upgrade for your gun. There are so many crazy things they could do with this game and that system, and I think they're just a perfect match for each other. I know fatshark loves to sort of copy whatever the hot flavor of the month game type is, and that's why there were loot boxes in Vermintide 2, and it's why it had like ultimate abilities, because Overwatch was a really big thing when Vermintide 2 is coming out. I hope that roguelikes are still hot enough for them to re-include this in Darktide. It would be an absolute banger. And I think one really cool thing they could do is, after they create a lot of these operations, they could use these operations as these shorter missions. We could have it be like an Operation Blitz, where it'd be hard to, in the lore of this game, tie together some of the missions, because Chaos Waste was tied together by literally just being crazy. Like, it's the Chaos Waste. It's literally is supposed to make no sense. You're on like this endless wandering journey through chaos. You don't know where you're fucking going. But in Atoma, it wouldn't make any sense to lose your way. But if you had separate short missions, like, okay, the heretics are attacking on these 10 fronts, we need to stop the train, then we need to defuse the bomb or whatever, and the start point would always be the drop off from the dropship, the end point would always be the dropship. It would be really easy, and then you could go touch in at the Morning Star for a refuel midway through, and that's where you'd go to the shop for your big upgrades, because there were upgrade shops periodically where you could buy the really good boons and stuff. And I think this would be amazing. Your powers would be more equipment based, what can your character carry, upgrades to your guns and stuff like that, than they would be blessings from the gods. But in the same vein, I think it would be really fun if fatshark had a little bit of fun with it and stretch the reality, because it doesn't make any sense that the veteran can regenerate 1 grenade every second. But what if the Ogren had this, or, what if the Ogren could give this perk to the veteran, or to the Psyker who has, the Void Strike or the Void Blast staff? Think about that. What if the Ogren was carrying the Frag Bomb, but he could get this upgrade, but it says 100% chance to throw an additional grenade from the veteran? This was actually a thing in Vermintide 2. You could throw 2 bombs instead of 1. And this was like a whole thing. You would go for this build on the Ranger Veteran class, and you would just spam the most powerful bomb in the world and blow everything up, and it was amazing. Or what if you were using the Frag Bomb, the big Ogren bomb, and you got the 1 grenade every 60 seconds? Like, think about that possibility. What about if you were playing Veteran and you get the Burst Limiter Override, a free lucky bullet, 8% chance, and you're playing Lasgun or something? What about if you're playing Zealot and you could pick up the Psyker's Medal and you're just like this crit insane Zealot who's moving super fast? What if you're playing any class and you can pick up the Zealot's Until Death ability and prevent your own death? Or Duelist and get this insane weak spot damage? Or Invocation of Death and regenerate your ability super fast on melee critical hits? I think that is a sort of interplay. Not all the abilities in Cataclysm or in Chaos Waste for Vermintide 2 were just remade versions of talents, but it's a really good starting place, and it's a really creative baseline for the game to have, just offering some of these class abilities to the other classes. It's stuff that they could really easily swap up, and the fact that it's like already in the game, the idea of throwing 2 grenades instead of 1, it means they could really easily be done, and it would be just so much fun. And the best part about that game mode is the intensity and the insanity of the enemies you end up going against as you progress down the line. Because your characters are so powerful, the enemy hordes that face you are just absolutely monstrous, but you've got this just tremendous firepower behind you. You've got guns that literally cannot run out of ammo. You've got like infinite grenades, or infinite ability spam, all that good stuff. It's just an amazing game mode, and I would love to see it return. I have high hopes for it. I had really high hopes that they would, be saying something about it on release for this game, but I think that they've been in sort of panic mode for the last 2 years trying to get it under control. But they released Chaos Waste when the game was, when Vermintide 2 was less popular than Darktide is now. So I'm still holding out hope that they can make it happen, and that we will see a Chaos Waste version, before the end of at least 2026 or something like that. Well, anyway, guys, that is everything that I could think of that I think, or I hope, I pray that will be added to Darktide in the near future. I think there's a lot of promise for Darktide, especially now that we're out of the weeds and we've got the core of the game stable for this next 2025. And 2026, who even knows at that point, but I'm really hoping we end up with at least 5 classes, and that new enemy type would be just absolutely great. And all the while, new missions, new weapons, all that good stuff. I didn't include those because those are very obvious. They're coming to the game, and not all that exciting, since we've seen a lot of that stuff before. Anyway, y'all, thank you very much for watching. If you are excited about Darktide content, you like what I do, and you like, seeing people kill stuff, consider liking and subscribing. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a good day. I'll see you next time. Mr. E out.